Thanks very much for joining me. I recognize that this is a pretty crazy time. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. The bad news, Trump launched an unconstitutional attack against Iran. Clearly, he hasn't read the Constitution of the United States. Only Congress has the right to take our country into a war. The extremist Netanyahu government in Israel continues to starve the children there and shoot down innocent people, a real horror. In America, people are walking the streets of our country and they're being picked up by masked federal agents, thrown into vans without any due process, being taken to detention centers. Supreme Court just today made some very bad decisions. That's the bad news, and it's pretty bad. But here's some good news. The good news is that Zohran Mamdani has won the Democratic primary for mayor of New York City. And he has laid out an agenda that reflects the needs of a struggling working class. He has taken on all of the big money interest in New York, the landlords, the billionaires, Wall Street, all of these guys. They spent a lot of money trying to defeat him, but he won. And what's interesting, and something that we'll have to observe, is will the Democratic leadership learn the lesson from his campaign? And that is that if you are prepared to stand up and fight for working families and take on the greed of corporate interest, you can create grassroots excitement. You can get thousands of people out on the street knocking on doors, and you can win elections.
After seeing his agenda move one step closer to being the worst and most unpopular budget ever passed last night, Donald Trump still wasn't satisfied. It had himself a little meltdown. But it wasn't because of Democrats. It wasn't because of Joe Biden. Surprisingly, it was because of the Republicans who opposed his bill, and one specifically who Donald Trump is now threatening as the MAGA civil war continues. We are going to get into it all, but before we do, I want to start with an update on how we can still continue to fight back against this budget. And we got that late last night from Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Well, it's 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and I am headed to the Capitol to force a full reading of the Republicans' 940-page bill. I bet that most Republicans in Congress haven't even read the damn thing. And why? Because these guys just dropped the final text of the bill at 12 in the morning. It is roughly a 1,000-page bill filled with God knows how many terrible provisions. But what we do know is that it will rip healthcare coverage away from 16 million people and cut food assistance from millions more. And that is why tonight, Democrats are holding the floor all night. We need to use every single second we can to fight back against Trump's bill. And every moment we delay this bill, we win just a little more time to stop it. And the other plus side, now Republicans can't lie and say, oh, they didn't even know what they voted for. And yes, that really happened. Look up, Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't read the bill. Just look it up. And you'll see just how fast these Republicans are ramming this abomination of a bill through Congress. Well, after tonight, we will know that every single Republican will have chosen to throw working people and middle class under the bus willingly. I'm fighting back because no kid should go hungry so Jeff Bezos can buy another yacht. No parent should have to choose between putting food on the table or getting their cancer treated so that Mark Zuckerberg can buy another Hawaiian island. It is sick, and we will not stand for this.
There still is time to build the opposition and at least make the case against Donald Trump's agenda, and I think this was an excellent move that needed to be done by Democrats. although it certainly doesn't go far enough, but making them read the bill, forcing them to be on the record as at least having had the opportunity to hear or read it, is important going forward. We need to hang this bill around the neck of every Republican and drag them down going into the midterms because they all supported this. They supported kicking millions of people off of their health care, decimating health care infrastructure across the country. They bear the responsibility. And at the time that it was being passed, they knew how unpopular it was, which is why we saw Republicans to at least vote against it. And one of those Republicans, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Donald Trump, is now making insane threats and he melted down last night. But before we get into the threat that he made, I think we need some really important context about what Donald Trump just did to North Carolina, which was called out by Senator Adam Schiff.
When you're elected to be president of the United States, you're not a half president. We need to remind the administration that a state may be blue or red, but it contains millions of people who are both blue and red. It's clear the Trump administration is politicizing the Army Corps and its critical mission to provide resources and stability to communities and states. When the fires broke out in LA earlier this year, we saw threats from the president and the administration to cut funding to California to help these communities rebuild. And now we're seeing funding cuts to flood prevention projects aimed at protecting our communities. When people need help, we help them. When people are fighting to rebuild, we help them rebuild. And when people need protection from flooding, we assure funding is in place so they're protected. No matter who the president is, no matter who's in charge of Congress, no matter who the governor is or who the senators are, no matter what state it is or what color of the state. This cannot and should not change.
Donald Trump denied FEMA funds to respond to Hurricane Helen damage to North Carolina. The man who ran exclusively on the weaponization of government against political opponents, something that wasn't happening to him, but he is actively carrying out, is now doing the same to North Carolina. And why that is so important is because of what Donald Trump wrote in his meltdown. Just take a look late last night. Trump wrote, "Looks like Senator Tom Tillis, as usual, wants to tell the nation that he is giving them a 60% tax increase as opposed to the biggest tax cut in American history." At the same time, he is unable to understand the importance of a debt extension, which Republicans gave to the Democrats just prior to the November 5th election because of its significance and how important it was for the future of the USA. Sadly, the Democrat politicians probably won't reciprocate on a debt extension because they're nasty people who actually hate our country. Tillis is also willing to throw away the very important tobacco industry in North Carolina out the window for reasons nobody seems to understand. He loves China-made windmills that will cost a fortune, ruin the landscape, and produce the most expensive energy on Earth. I can't believe the great people of North Carolina, a state that I love and won all 3 times in a state that I just brought back with money, blood, sweat, and tears from the recent tragic floods when sleepy Joe Biden let them drown right up until the end of that. Trump then followed that nonsensical mess up with a threat saying, "Numerous people have come forward wanting to run in the primary against Senator Tom Tillis." Why is that in quotes? I will be meeting with them over the coming weeks looking for someone who will properly represent the great people of North Carolina. And so importantly, the United States of America, thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald Trump did not provide FEMA funds to North Carolina. He didn't do that. Joe Biden also didn't let anyone drown. I remember the day that Donald Trump traveled to North Carolina after that devastating hurricane where he built his press podium out of the rubble of the town that he was interrupting. I remember that day because MAGA was praising Trump, saying, "Look at Trump. He's on the ground. Oh, He cares so dearly. But what they didn't realize or understand, because they're idiots, is that Donald Trump traveling to North Carolina, his presence on the ground actually interrupted the flow of disaster relief because he was just such a big imposition on the town. His presence, the police escorts required, so of course Joe Biden and VP Harris weren't going to value a photo op over people's recovery. But that is Trump as a person. And so, no, it's not surprising that he's lying about what he did not do for the state. And it's no surprise that he's attacking Tom Tillis. But I will enjoy the MAGA civil war that comes out of this and hope that it goes at least somewhere in stopping this bill, which we have to continue to call out. And that is exactly what we saw from Bernie Sanders in this clip right here.
And it does all of that, make massive cuts in order to pay for the largest tax break for billionaires in our nation's history. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that this legislation would cut Medicaid in the Affordable Care Act by over $1 trillion. These cuts, along with ending the enhanced premium credits in the Affordable Care Act, will lead to 16 million people losing their health insurance. 16 million people. That's not just me talking. That is what the director of the Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan organization, has told us. This bill, further, for the first time, forces millions of Medicaid recipients who make as little as $16,000 a year to pay a $35 copayment every time they visit a doctor. And what will be the impact of that? It's not rocket science. I think we can all figure it out. If people don't have access to health care, if they lose their health insurance, if they can't go to a doctor when they need to, if people have to pay a deductible they can't afford to pay, ordinary people, low-income people, working-class people will suffer, and tens of thousands will die. The Yale University School of Public Health and the University of Pennsylvania estimated that if this reconciliation bill is enacted, over 50,000 Americans will die unnecessarily each and every year. 50,000 Americans. That's what we're talking about here. Not only would millions of Americans lose their health insurance, and tens of thousands of our constituents needlessly die. If this legislation is enacted, rural hospitals all over this country that are already struggling would be forced to shut down, lay off workers, or substantially reduce the vital healthcare services they provide. In other words, this bill, on top of everything else, would be a disaster for rural America, which, as everybody knows, is struggling right now. Further, when Trump and the Republicans in Congress make massive cuts to Medicaid, they're also making massive cuts to community health centers, which provide primary health care to 32 million low-income and working-class Americans. Community health centers rely on Medicaid for 43% of their revenue. So when you cut hundreds of billions of dollars in Medicaid, you're significantly cutting back on the access that millions of low-income and working Americans will have to the primary care they need. And at a time when some 22% of our seniors are trying to survive on less than $15,000 a year, this legislation will make it much harder for seniors and people with disabilities to receive the care they desperately need in nursing homes. Medicaid, in fact, provides over 60% of the revenue nursing homes rely on.
We still do have the opportunity to oppose and stop this agenda, and we are going to be working at doing that every single day on this show. Thanks for watching this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.